Well, good morning, everybody. All right, here's the plan for today's forecast video. I want to answer a question that has been asked a lot over the last several weeks about central United States wind, specifically throughout the plains. We're going to look at some historical data to start this off. I'm then going to shift over to a quick discussion about snow, looking at snowpack throughout the western United States, and a brief forecast on where I think some of the snow might be in the next 10 days or so. We're going to follow that up with a discussion about longer range severe weather as we work into this month of April. I'll walk through the typical model cadence, and at the very end, when we get down to these slides over here, we're going to be looking at the new CPC summer forecast, which for the western Cornbelt went exceptionally dry. So that's an important trend to look at. And we're going to finish with just a quick bit on South America. So the animation you're looking at was the storm system in the middle of this week. This is the one that created the massive dust storm that came out of parts of New Mexico, Texas, and actually got wrapped into the storm system, bringing its dust along with a bunch of rain and some severe weather into the Midwestern United States. You can just look at the map and get a sense of just how windy of a spring this has been. But I want to show you this. This is what we expect later today. There's going to be some strong low-level winds that are going to come through parts of the Midwest again, and that has prompted a look at the possibility of more gusts getting up into those 40 to 50 mile an hour range in through here. And that's why the National Weather Service once again today has a couple of areas of red flag warning. Now, some pretty chilly air has moved into the southeast. This is why we have the freeze warning and frost advisories down here in Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. And we're going to take a look at what's coming through the northern tier of the United States over the rest of this weekend in just a few moments. But I kind of led off with this discussion about wind. So it's a very challenging thing to quickly recreate a climatology of wind. In other words, if you wanted to look at what's changed with respect to wind speed, direction, intensity specifically. I need more time to do that study. But what I can show you is this. Okay, this is using a tool that is looking at what we call reanalysis data. So this is historically reprocessed gridded weather data around the world. And I'm going to look at, I'll show you the area I'm looking at here, everything within this bounding box. So this is a lot of the plains and Midwest, all right, also including the lower Mississippi River Valley. The reason that I'm analyzing this area is because this is what was asked. These are the people in here that have been asking me this question. So what we're going to do is we're going to plot the wind speed at 10 meters, that's 30 feet, which is a standard height at which the National Weather Service measures wind speed. We're going to use the ERA 5 data set from the ECMWF reanalysis, which goes back to 1940. Now, this is what it shows, all right? When I look at this, you're kind of going, all right, what am I, is there a trend in this? If you did kind of like a running mean, your eye would probably do something like that, right? Which means that back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, we were in a windier spring. Now, by the way, this is only spring, February, March, and April. I know that May and June are in spring, but meteorologically, spring kind of starts in March for the Midwest, but it's full on down south. But what you can see here is that back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, we had relatively high winds. Then we noticed that in the 70s to maybe 1990, there was a downturn. Now, I don't know. I haven't taken the time to analyze this. I'm sure there are papers written about it. But for many of us, if you just look back over the last 30 plus, maybe almost 40 years, yeah, spring has felt as though it's gotten windier. And I just want to show you that it's in the data, so you're not imagining it. Okay, there is a windier trend for the last about 40 years in the central United States. Now, that doesn't mean every spring is windy, but it's certainly showing up here. And I'm curious where 2025 is going to land, given some of these stronger winds we've seen this February and now almost all the way through March. In fact, we just started spring yesterday. So I wanted to give you that just so you can kind of have a good look at it here. By the way, you can play around with this website. That's a great tool. In fact, I'll link it down in the notes below, and you can come in and specify your own areas or go look at different geographies all over the world and recreate a lot of different historical time series of different weather variables. This is done on a month-by-month basis. You can choose the timing over here, so you can look at all these different preset intervals of time, and depending on what variable you're looking at, you'll be able to look at something other than the surface. So it's a fantastic tool to play around with. Again, I'll link it down below. All right, from there, I do want to show you some neat satellite data from yesterday as the system was exiting east. There we can see it. It was kind of fun to watch the snow swath from the previous system right in through here. There was even some snow in Illinois. It's kind of the second time this pocket of Illinois has been hit with snow on the backside here. But yesterday, as I was giving a talk to a group in Montana, I was focusing a lot on western U.S. snowpack. We're just trying to determine how are we finishing this winter time frame with our snowpack. So let's go ahead and have a look at it here. My season-to-date snowfall departure from normal map hasn't changed too much, other than in the last few weeks, this has really come back up closer to normal. That's one of the big areas. We're going to take a look at the West on the whole. We'll also talk about the Colorado Basin in a few moments. But again, this is a region where overall snow deficits were high. Same thing for the coastal parts of the East Coast, where we still did not see above average snowfall this particular winter, despite the really, really cold conditions, especially we saw in the month of February. But there is, and you'll see this in a few minutes, reason to think that the upper Midwest could get hit pretty hard here coming up pretty soon. So I'll show you that in a few moments. But here's the latest basin average number. I know a lot of you visit this website. If you've not done this when you get here, you can actually click on the basins and get time series. I don't know if this will pull up here. I don't know why it's a bit slow, but you can. Let's try another one. Well, maybe there it is. You'll be able to see how you compare to historical averages if you want to take a look at this. But overall, it's this assessment. Oh, sorry about that. This assessment. This time of year. Let's do this right now. There we go. I look at this and I see pretty good numbers. I want to see this color shade and above by the time we get to this point in the year. So the main struggle areas, which we've talked about a lot, have been just far, really, really far to the south, Arizona and New Mexico. Most of the locations are about 80% or above, which means we're going into this upcoming spring and summer with decent snowpack in the West. And it's amazing to think that so much of what you see here came in just 4 events. And that's it. It was 4 events that hit this area pretty hard this particular winter. November, we had like almost one a month, it seemed like, coming into this region. Checking in on the upper Colorado Basin. So again, you're just looking at the snowpack measured in snow water equivalent. You can see that dash line in the back giving you averages. Where we currently sit is about if I could hover over it there, it's about 80. So sorry, I don't know what's going on this morning. About almost 90% of average. So even the upper Colorado Basin is doing okay. And I mentioned I'm going to show you some snow. With this upcoming pattern shift, we will be watching a bit more ridging in the west, which means more systems are going to be targeting British Columbia, Cascades, Northern Rockies. But we'll get some clipper action here. And there's a storm system that is showing up in the European, not in the GFS. The timing is a mess. That is attempting to hit the Red River Valley, northern Minnesota, Ontario. I mean, this could be a big one. And I noticed that we've got, most of Minnesota and Wisconsin in on the action as well. And I do see a bit in the interior and northeast of the Northeast as well. So we're going to take a look at this in a few moments. But I did want to point out Colorado Basin, we're still going to get some more snow here. It's not big, late March snows. But we're going to watch out for just adding a little bit more here with much better snow in the Northwest. Okay, from here, let's talk about severe weather, so rapid shift overall. Now, Matt and I have made a case lately by studying historical droughts, by studying the patterns we've seen in March, that there needs to be a return especially in April and May, which is climatologically consistent. In other words, that's when it typically happens. There's got to be a return of our normal summer thunderstorm activity in this area to start to alleviate the drought risk that we have kind of built into our longer range forecast. Now, it's been very active in much of the Ohio Valley, mid-Mississippi Valley, parts of the Mid-South, and the whole of the Southeast, and even up into the East Coast, given that system that went through last week. But we're attempting to assess how this might transition in April and May. In other words, the main narrative is if it fails to get back here in earnest, in other words, repeated days of slower systems with higher end risk on not just rain, but the severe weather, then we've got a problem brewing in spring that we're going to have to pay close attention to. I want to give you some statistics on this really quickly. Where are we in terms of tornado count compared to historic averages? Average would be 175. We're at 257. So we're above the average, primarily due to the event last weekend. That's the big spike that you see here. That's Friday and Saturday, excuse me. In terms of hail reports, we are almost right on our average, just a shade below the historical averages. And wind reports, no surprise here. If the average is 848, we're at 1,936. There's been some very strong, not only synoptic scale winds, adding to the thunderstorm scale winds out of these past several systems. And you can see them right there. There's the one in February, March, late February, early March, and then the one we just experienced. So I wanted to give you those stats. Now, coming back to this longer-term narrative, the newest drought monitor shows us some important things. We saw degradation and drought primarily here in the newest update. That's where the drought monitor got worse. We're currently sitting at, let's write the numbers on this for you, 44% of the lower 48 in D1 to D4. That would be the second shading. That's not including this like yellow color here. And a year ago at this point, we were actually inching down. We were already down to 21%. So we're more than double where we were a year ago in terms of drought area. So what we need to think about with all of this is anything kind of shifting around to take the precipitation patterns of the last 60 days and start to modify them. So if you notice, the drought expansion area, was primarily in here, but this whole region has been dry, considering even the fact that we've had better moisture in Arizona as of late. But then again, you look at this part of the Dakotas, the Red River Valley of the North, even a pocket of Missouri getting into Illinois. In fact, I live in this, and I can tell you some of the recent rains that have come through have soaked in very, very quickly in those areas. But this is the region we're going to be focusing a lot on right in through here, given how dry it's been for not just the last couple of weeks, but 2 months. So from here, I do want to bring up the newest seasonal drought outlook. This was just released yesterday, and they have now kind of shifted this drought development likely area to encompass more of Nebraska, Kansas. It had been including southern Colorado, New Mexico, northern Texas, and Oklahoma. And so their new forecast, the CPC, which is through NOAA, has really increased the risk as we get into, look at that goes all the way through June 30th, of seeing drought develop there, while we're expecting much tighter windows in spring here and drought alleviation in the pockets that are in this area. So and I think this is the story. And if you look at the biggest category, drought persisting, they are not changing much of our western Cornbelt or the southwestern United States, the Sun Belt, and even pockets throughout the east going through the spring time frame. And just coming back to the wind idea, we've seen so much of our drier surface soil getting blown around. And this just, again, is showing you the top 16 inches according to NASA's modeling and measurement here. And last night I was on Twitter just talking with some folks in the Northern Plains, specifically in South Dakota, just about how dry things are. And it was an interesting conversation because of the kind of the discussion around, well, if I had to choose, and this was just one of the farmers talking, if I had to choose, I'd rather be a bit drier now than it being so incredibly wet or covered in snow that I'm sitting on my hands and waiting and watching that flood threat come out. And there was a discussion about 2019. I'm actually going to show you this really quickly. So I'm taking you to one of my favorite websites, this one. And what we're going to do when we get here is we're going to look at the national analysis link. And I'm going to show you the snow water equivalent currently. So there you go. This is what we've got. And then I want to take you back, and I want to take this back to 2019 really quickly on March 21st. So the comparison here I think is quite valuable because in 2019 we had 6 to 10 inches of liquid in the snow here, creating a scenario that produced massive flooding on the Missouri River. That was what was being discussed last night with a group I was just chatting with on Twitter. So I get it. I understand. But this just puts us in a position where later on in the summer we're going to be very much concerned about how the rainfall situation is going to evolve. So let's go ahead and talk about the rest of spring, because this was just released by NOAA. This is their new April outlook, and it echoes a lot of the things we've been concerned about, right? That this whole area was going to continue to struggle with adequate moisture. We were expecting tighter windows throughout the Ohio and Mississippi Valley, getting into the Great Lakes states, with just more frequent systems blowing up farther to the east, increasing the chances of rainfall and shortening the time period between rainfall events. And the wild card had always been what was in between, right? We've made this case that if, it was always an if we can get a systems to slow down and hit this area, then we could start to beat back this drought risk in the plains going forward into summer. I do want to show you, let's compare models here. This is the new CPC update. This is what was just released from the European model. And I'm going to point out that a lot of what you've got here, I'm going to show you, this is mainly coming in next week. Okay, day 8 through 14. But you notice that it's got this wetter corridor, and there are drier risks. But if you've been watching my videos, you've now noticed that this whole region has been trending back toward average from what was a very, very dry forecast. Now in the west, this has actually trended up. So Northern California, Oregon, and Washington, we've actually seen increases. Same thing for parts of Idaho as well. But I wanted to bring this to your attention. Now, what's important about April is that if we're going to revive a drought, not revive it, but undo a drought in the plains, it often is done with severe weather, which is that's a double-edged sword, right? But we need to keep an eye on this. And by the way, I know that the southeast is looking dry in this forecast. I don't know why. I think we're actually going to see more of this turning over to normal, or even over to those green shades. But let's go ahead and talk, and I'm going to take you to another website. I'll link this one below as well. One of my friends and colleagues, his name is Victor Cassini. He is a professor up at Northern Illinois University. He specializes in subseasonal severe weather forecasting. That's his forte, among many things. And he has a great website, and if you get here, you can explore anywhere you want. But I would encourage you to come down to the Dynamical SCP forecasts. And what he's looking at is Supercell composite parameter. It's kind of a neat thing to look for. When you click on it, you're taken to his page, and I want you just to scroll down to the bottom here. So what he's got week 1, week 2, and then he's got these are from the, I believe these are the GFS ensemble. Yeah, GAEFS ensemble. And then down here, he's got the CFS V2. Now, Victor will tell you this as well, and I'll echo this. This isn't a model that we tend to put a tremendous amount of trust in. But if we start to see a consistent signal coming from the model, it's something to be watching. So you notice that there seems to be something going on here in the next 7 days, and then into week 2, and still into week 3, with respect to increasing chances of having storms down south. And this is a region that we've monitored carefully with the expansion of drought. I mean, I have a lot of friends that live in Texas. One of my former business partner and very close friend, Bill Chapman, he's down here in Austin. And I mean, he's told me just how dry things have been. And we've kind of just seen the dust storms emerge from there. So we're watching it carefully. So Bill, maybe you're watching this morning. Take a look at this. This is the newest forecast from the WPC for the next 7 days. And I've not seen that in a while. Now, we have a drier area here, no doubt about it. And we're still drier here. But this is different. We need to take a look at when and where that's coming from, all right? So let's do that by starting off with this. If you'd like to know, one of the first few things that I sit down and look at, I look at the vorticity maps. This tells me where I'm going to get lift in the atmosphere, and it kind of gives me the cadence of system, and the European seems to be on it right now, okay? So as we look, this is going into Saturday and then into Sunday. There's a wave that's moving across the northern tier of the United States. We're going to talk about that one here for bringing in some snow up here and then eventually some rain into the Midwest. But how far to the east that rain makes it is what's going to be critical to understand. We'll do that in a few moments. Then we see that low comes through. There it is, deepening over the Great Lakes into the northeast. And here it is. There's our ridge, and there's our broader trough. So this is the drier outcome in this area. Mild, very warm air coming back into the western United States. Where are we? We're next Tuesday. Now, what is interesting is when we get these big ridges in the west, we can often get little cutoff lows that form to the south. And you can see one trying to take shape right here. And what's interesting is that cutoff low moves over the mountains in Mexico and emerges in Texas. And you just need to see that right in through this corridor, there are some small little disturbances. That's what we call them, this little places where there are spin-ups in the atmosphere. Now, the big ridge moving into the middle part of the country is over the top of this or to the north of it, while another trough, big one, comes into the northwest. But right there is the first round of bringing in some of that rain. And the European model, a week from now, next Friday, is dipping a trough with neutral tilt right through the Four Corners states. And then it takes on some negative tilt here. That's that backslash look in the trough axis. And it's trying to pull it right through Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin. And that is the reason the European model went after big-time snows here. Now, it's not even in the GFS, but now that you see the cadence of these next few systems, much different from what we've been seeing, right? We need to take a look at it, the actual model output. So here we go. We're going to start off with the high-res NAM. One system exiting, one entering. We're going to play this forward through the rest of the day on Friday. Most of the country is dry, a little weak frontal boundary sticking through here, the northwest and the very northeast are the wetter regions. So that's through tonight, getting into, let's see here, this is now Saturday morning, Saturday midday, and here comes that first wave out of Montana into the Dakotas and it's going to curl up and start to make its precipitation on Sunday, kind of stretching along a weaker frontal boundary here. There's not much rain in this, but we'll see some moisture coming through on Sunday morning. All right, snow to the north. That's round one. Take note of the next system. It's more hitting British Columbia than it is Washington and northern Idaho. But as we work our way out through midday Sunday, it curls up, front passes over to Indiana, Ohio, snow in the UP, snow back in Minnesota, even back to the Red River Valley. That's just the first of the systems that are going to come through here. To get to the next one, I got to take you over to the comparison between the GFS and the European. But you're going to notice that they're in pretty good sync through Saturday into Sunday. So there it is. Very, very similar forecasts. We do need to be on the lookout down here for strong to severe storms on Sunday. And then as we work our way into Monday, that front clears the southeast, some snow into the interior of the northeast, and then we get into the flow. Can you almost see it? Look at that. That's the western ridge. There's a little bit of a squeeze in the middle here, big, long, stretched out frontal boundary, but that's by Tuesday. Now what we're watching is the west. Keep an eye on this big system here while the little shortwave sneaks through. There it is. So this is when the flow's, sorry about that. Let's move you back over. This is when that pattern's doing this and the cutoff low goes right in through here. And what you're going to notice, it's in both models, is as the large system digs into the west, we've got storms next Wednesday, Thursday, really Thursday, down here in Texas in both models. And that has been a very, very dry region. Now, we know something about storms in southern Texas. You can get plenty of rain. And if the next day the temperatures go back up to 80, 90, and it's windy, you lose a lot of that to evaporation. So we're not looking at this to be a drought curing event, but it's rain down here. So then we play it forward, and then this low emerges. Now look at the model differences. You're going, what? The European, next Saturday, March 29, massive system, severe weather to the south, blizzard conditions to the north, rain in the central, and then you're like, where is it in the GFS? Well, it's late. The GFS tries to blow it up a day and a half later. And the reason for that is simply this. There goes a little cutoff. Look at the difference in the wave from the European model versus the GFS next Thursday. So by the time we get that out to Saturday, that's the big pronounced system that's coming through. In the European and the GFS has lost it. When does it come through? It's like a secondary wave later, right there. So this is why you see some model differences. To show you what the end effect of that is of the next 10 days, this is the 10-day European total precipitation, and this is the 10-day GFS. 10-day Euro, 10-day GFS. And look at your area, and I'll go back and forth again. 10-day Euro, 10-day GFS. This is the AI model. Very interesting how the AI model is kind of a blend of both, but it's taking more of the maximums from both. So Euro, GFS, AI. Probability-wise, next 10 days here has the best chance of getting over an inch. And for the first time in a long time, that region, it's not much, but there's a 10 to 30% chance, maybe 40% chance of getting over an inch. This region, look at that. I mean, a 50 to 70% chance here. We've already been wet in this region. They don't need it there. But look at that. That's a change in the central U.S. Now, the northwest, wet, southwest, dry. We can also see this region over here, Georgia, North, South Carolina, Virginia, on the drier side of things. In fact, let's go show you the probability. Sorry, I got the new model run in there. Look at the probability over the next 10 days. Let's get it out there for you. There it is, of staying under a half inch. So there's still this signal, right? But we're starting to see more of it eaten away. And here's the probability staying under a tenth of an inch. Now, if you've been watching, we've seen this area be much larger with much higher probabilities of staying under a tenth. There is just something brewing that seems to be helping with this drought scenario that's in the plains of the United States. So here's the thing. Over the weekend, watch this trend. If this is just a fluke in Friday's model runs and we go back over to more drier conditions in this area, that would be the persistence in the forecast versus the actual change that the models are predicting. Now, I mentioned snow. Look at the differences in the snow. That's the 10-day Euro snow. Look at this. That's from that system next weekend. And then this is the 10-day GFS. There's still snow here, but nowhere near the swath of extensive snow that the European is doing. And it's later. It's starting here next Saturday night. Okay? This is the AI 10-day forecast on snow. Much, much different picture than the GFS, which has got a couple of hyper-focused bands in here. We already talked about the Western snow, right? And the European. So do not settle on a snowfall forecast out there 10 days. I just wanted to show you the model differences right now. So what about week 2? You can look at all 4 of the maps, and I'm going to pick, you can look at the GFS or you can look at the Euro. Look at this. While we do have this drier risk here, wetter there, and wetter West Coast. Now this is the spot we're waiting into April to see change, right? That's the key region to be keeping an eye on. So that's my discussion on precip next 2 weeks. Now let's get out there on temperatures. Major change in temperature. So all that cold air that just invaded the central U.S. is now moving east. We see a significant warm up here as the winds shift back around out of the south. Temperatures are already up to 30 degrees warmer than they were yesterday. And here's the high temperatures for today. So this is still some of the snow-covered ground. That's why there's that sliver right in through there of cooler weather. But here's today's highs getting into tomorrow. Very warm throughout the plains, cooler around the Great Lakes, cooler in the northwest. This is Sunday into Monday. Watch the warm-up in the west on Tuesday and Wednesday. Very, very warm for this time of year. This is when this is going on, right? So there's the trough, the big ridge, and we're going to watch, okay, where are we in time? We're going to watch that cutoff low right down here move its way over towards Texas. And that's why you're starting to get the little bit of cooler air right there by next Wednesday, Thursday. It's not much, but it's the rain that we're talking about. If you look at the temperature matrix, I mean, that's why I made this. I want you to just be able to see 3 models in next 5 days, next 10 days, next 15 days, right? And just look at look at all 3 of the models, and you don't see significant long duration intrusions of colder air. And then I want to show you this. We've been concerned about some early April cool down here, right? While keeping it very, very warm in this area. This is the newest forecast for the last week of April. And one of the things you often don't see me do, because these videos would be hours long, is I do the model trend analysis every morning. And I'm going to show you it today, because this is today's run for the last week of March. If I went back, I don't know, let's go back to this run. That was what the previous forecast was. Much colder, not nearly as pronounced warm, and near normal to cooler here. So when you look at this, I don't know, we can go to each day. This was the forecast run that was made back on March 10th. And here's the latest. These are all the same time period. Look at the difference. So then we start to slide out here. That's now the new first week of April. We had seen much colder risk in this area, right? But now there's a much broader area of warmer air, and our cooler region in the west has kind of shrunk a bit. So when you look out there to mid-April, this is the week ending on April 21. And we start to see, that shrunk and this got cold. Watch these trends and to see if this goes back over warm again. I will be watching it very carefully, because what it seems to me the model did was kick this cold risk in April down the road. And colder in late April is much different than colder in early April, given the typical seasonal increase in temperatures we get in April, right? So just keep all that in mind. Now, the new update from the CPC. This is their new forecast for April, May, and June. Now, we've already seen this. Tighter here, drying, expansion there. But watch this. This is now May, June, July. Look at that. This is June, July, August, putting the epicenter of the driest air in the western Cornbelt. Now, did the IRI multi-model forecast do that? Yep, we talked about that on Wednesday. Did the European model do this? Yes, but not to this extent. And the NMME absolutely hit this area hard. That's June, July, August forecast from the newest update from the CPC. Going one more step, this is July, August, September. That is hammering the western Cornbelt upper Midwest with drought. It's also delivering, because it's the only way to do this is to plant high pressure here. So you're going to get this ring around it. Storms here. Why? Because we'll probably have the Bermuda high flow coming in. It's going to be displaced east. It has to be. But that's probably what's going to give you additional convergence there. And then around that high, you're going to get flow that does this, enhancing the southwest monsoon. That is the pressure pattern around their late summer outlook. Now, I'm not prepared yet to talk to you about the hurricane forecast. I'm going to do that in April. But that's your latest update. The temperature forecast is a bit odd, though. This is their April, May, June outlook. This is their May, June, July. And this is their June, July, August. Now, had this epicenter of heat been there, we would have been talking about substantial yield loss from drought and heat. But they're tending to build most of the heat into the Great Basin. And so I need to understand, well, I told you where I think the surface high pressure might be, but is the jet way up here? There's a lot of unknowns about this new forecast from them. And this, by the way, is the July, August, September. They're taking most of the heat compared to historical averages. The probability of exceedance is what this is into the Pacific Northwest. We just have to assess it. That's what we've got. All right, I'll look at it all weekend, and I'm also going to be watching this. This is the new 10-day outlook from the European model, and we've talked about it now for a while. The models are trying to increase rainfall. If you've been watching my videos all week, this is the area that's been dry. They're trying to bring in that frontal boundary to relieve some of the significant drought developing in Bahia, Minas Gerais, Goiás, and Tocantins, but decent rains in Mato Grosso, very wet in Paraguay, and most of Argentina is expected to be stormy as we get up for the next 10 days. So I'm going to stop here. That kind of finishes up this analysis. I hope you found it useful, and we'll just talk again on Monday. Have a great weekend. Be safe. All right. Thanks.